Earlier this morning, Donald Trump has confirmed a terrifying but predictable bombshell that he is interested in seeking a constitutionally forbidden third term in office and has even considered strategies and methods on how to do so. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends. Yep, courtesy of NBC News. Trump won't rule out seeking a third term in the White House, tells NBC News there are methods for doing so. Trump said in a Sunday morning phone call that he was, quote, not joking about a third term, adding that, quote, it's far too early to think about it. Not exactly comforting. Trump did not rule out the possibility of seeking a third term in the White House, which is prohibited by the Constitution under the 22nd Amendment, saying in an exclusive interview with NBC News that there were methods for doing so and clarifying that he was, quote, not joking. Quote, a lot of people want me to do it, Trump said in a Sunday morning phone call with NBC News, referring to his allies. Quote, but I mean, I basically tell them we have a long way to go, you know. It's very early in the administration. Quote, I'm focused on the current, Trump added in some of his most extensive comments to date about serving a third term. When asked about whether he wanted another term, Trump said, quote, I like working. I'm not joking, Trump said when asked to clarify. Quote, but I'm not, it's far too early to think about it. When asked whether he has been presented with plans to allow him to seek a third term, Trump said, quote, there are methods which you could do it. NBC News asked about a possible scenario in which Vice President J.D. Vance would run for office and then pass the role to Trump. Trump responded with, quote, that's one method. Quote, but there are others too, Trump added. Asked to share another method, Trump simply responded, no. According to the Constitution, to abolish the two-term limit would be exceedingly difficult, requiring either a two-thirds vote of Congress or two-thirds of the states agreeing to call a constitutional convention to propose changes. Either route would then require ratification from three-quarters of the states. Trump pointed to his poll numbers, saying that, quote, a lot of people would like me to run for a third term. Of course, he's historically unpopular. He's had the shortest presidential polling honeymoon in recorded history, and I'm not sure where he's getting this from, although I have no doubt that a disturbing number of Republicans would support this. Trump has previously commented on running for a third term in office, though Republicans have seen these comments as jokes or Trump trolling his critics, which, by the way, I have a problem with that for a few reasons. Number one, there's nothing wrong with the president, any president, Republican or Democrat, having a sense of humor. President Reagan, Ronald Reagan, was well known for his sense of humor, and he was a Republican, a terrible president and a Republican, but he was entitled to a sense of humor. But then he would clarify when things are joking. If Trump said, yeah, I'm going to run for a third term, and then said he was joking, I have a pretty wide sense of humor, and I'd be more permissible with that. But Trump never clarifies that he's joking, and he and his supporters take actions which indicate that he's not joking. And the words of a president matters. Piers Morgan, if you're watching, please be sure to like and subscribe. But this idea that, focus on what he says, what he does, not what he says. Well, the problem is that the words of the most powerful man on earth matter. And they'd matter to you, Piers Morgan, and conservatives and centrists, if it were Democrats saying this shit, which means you are, in my opinion, morally and ethically obligated to be consistent in your principles, and means you should be bothered when Trump does it. If you're not bothered when Trump does it, then I don't ever want to hear any of you bitch about anything a Democratic president ever says ever again, because we can just say, well, it doesn't matter. Look at their actions. Of course, you would never agree to that standard, which means you're unprincipled hypocrites, right, who grade Trump on a curve, but I digress. Words matter, especially when they come from powerful people, especially when they come from the most powerful people. So let's get back to it. Representative Andy Ogles from Tennessee crafted a resolution calling for the extension of presidential term limits, which would allow Trump to seek another term in office. And indeed, he did. We've covered this in previous videos. This moron here, this dipshit loser here, who should be made fun of for the rest of his life, give President Trump a third term. Andy Ogles proposes amending the 22nd Amendment to allow Trump to serve a third term. There's also a guy who wants to rename Dulles Airport after Donald Trump as well. So the cultishness is strong, not just in the Republican base, but among Republican elected officials. It's hard not to take this seriously. Meanwhile, Trump ally Steve Bannon said in an interview on News Nation that he believes Trump will, quote, run and win again in 2028. Bannon said in the same interview that he thought, quote, we'll still have a couple of alternatives in determining how Trump could seek a third term despite the two-term maximum for holding the presidency. The White House has amplified Trump's comments, likening himself to royalty, posting a picture of a fake magazine cover depicting the president with a crown after the administration shot down congestion pricing in New York City. The White House's post to X quoted Trump's previous comments on Truth Social, long live King. So yes, Trump says he's interested in a third term. And he's not joking when he says he's interested in it. He says that he has methods and strategies that he's contemplated or have been presented to him by those who have contemplated them. And so they're seriously thinking about it. But he says it's too early in this administration to really give it a lot of thought right now. Clearly, thought has been put into it, not just by Trump, but by Republican lawmakers. And Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. Now, it's not just that. We had a poll about this back in late February. 52% say Trump will try to serve a third term. Okay? As The Hill reported, 52% of Americans said Trump will try to serve a third term, according to a poll from YouGov. When asked if they believe Trump will attempt to serve a third term in his current role, 21% of respondents said definitely, and 31% said probably. So, majority of Americans think that he will try to do it. Another poll asked, does Donald Trump want to be king? Do you think that Donald Trump wants to be king of the United States? 49% said yes. 37% said no. And I'm thinking of President Washington, right, who I've said is my favorite president. I think the general historical rankings have it right. Washington is the best, followed by Lincoln, although actually, I shouldn't say that. In more polls than not, Lincoln ranks even higher than President Washington. But the reason I would give Washington the nod, even over President Lincoln, is because of Washington's relationship with power. Is just something like we've just never seen anything like it. You know, he was the only president to be unanimously elected, and I think reelected by the Electoral College. He could have served for life. As a matter of fact, during the Revolutionary War, President Washington, then General Washington's top lieutenants came to him and reportedly said that they would help him overthrow the Continental Congress and basically set himself up as king. And he is reported to have said, do you think I led the war against George III, the King of Great Britain at the time, to become George I? He walked away from power, not just there, but even at the end of the Revolutionary War, right? He had the colonial militia behind him. It was his military. He was the commander-in-chief. And what did he do? He went to the Continental Congress and resigned his commission and walked away from power. And then he did it again after his second term as president of the United States. And he had to be begged to become president in the first place. Washington has had the healthiest relationship with executive power we have ever seen in any president. That's why I put, that is superhuman. It's extraordinary. Contrast that with Donald Trump. 50% of Americans yeah, he wants to be king. Interesting. Do you think that Trump should be the king of the United States? Only 7% say yes, which is about 7% too high, but 84% say no. Yet, most Americans recognize that that is an ambition he has. As The Independent reports, why plans are already in motion for a Trump third term, no matter what the law says. When Trump took the oath of office again, it was the last time he'd be able to do so under the country's constitution. But that hasn't stopped his team from flirting with the idea of running again, and Democrats are nowhere to be seen. Let's see. The safeguard of the two-term president emerged in direct response to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's unprecedented four-term presidency during the 30s and 40s. Before Roosevelt, the informal precedent set by President Washington, stepping down after 2 terms, had been respected by every president. Today, the 22nd Amendment leaves little room for interpretation. Quote, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term, which some other person was elected president, shall be elected to the office of president more than once. Earlier this year, again, it goes into what Congressman Ogles has attempted to do. Quote, well, excuse me, that was a quote from Ogles. I don't want to rot my brain. It certainly wouldn't surprise constitutional law professor Michelle Goodwin if Trump actively did try to seek a third term by any means necessary. Quote, there's already been a display of lawlessness in the executive orders and other actions taken by the Trump administration, she said. Indeed, Goodwin, a professor from Georgetown Law, says Trump is making history for things that are anti-democratic and anti-constitutional, and goes into the example of birthright citizenship that he tried to abolish via executive order. Let's see. Other legal scholars have dismissed the idea of running for a third term as impossible, but for Trump's most ardent supporters, constitutional roadblocks have rarely been a concern. In fact, the mere suggestion that he might seek to extend his grip on power has already energized the base. Goodwin says the Trump administration is moving in coercive ways into legal spaces. Yeah, it's just really really stunning stuff. But this is where we are. And of course, who are the final arbiters of the Constitution, at least under the notion of judicial review? Supreme Court of the United States. Trump appointed 3 of the Supreme Court justices. 6 of them are conservative. 2 of them, Alito and Thomas, that were not Trump appointed, have been rather generous. They are MAGA in spirit, in some ways more MAGA in spirit than the ones Trump did appoint. And even the moderate Chief Justice John Roberts was the one who authored the majority opinion to give Trump sweeping, totally ridiculous constitutional immunity, sweeping presidential immunity, the likes of which we've just never seen. So I can't rule that out, that the Supreme Court wouldn't radically reinterpret the 22nd Amendment to favor Trump. We can't. The odds of that are greater than 0. That's a problem. So yeah, there you have it. Donald Trump confirming he is interested in seeking a 3rd term. The only reason he's not talking about it a lot right now, he says, is because it's too early in his 2nd term, but he has considered it. He is interested in doing it, and there are methods and strategies to make it happen. We are truly in uncharted territory, and I guess we'd better keep an eye on it. Pretty stunning. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.